Well, I'd love to end on that one. We did promise one last one. Right here is the microphone's coming. I bought your book outside on the way in. And
Thank you very much.
I've been skimming through the footnotes. There's a lot of footnotes to the Society of Cincinnati Library. I was curious, you've got an interesting section toward the end about George Washington's effort to credit the Continental Army, and especially the officers, and not the militia, the diplomats. It's a fascinating section. It's as though you're suggesting George Washington, for some reason, and that's my question, what's the reason? He's beginning already to say the Continental officers are the ones who won the war for you. And then you say this is in all the newspapers of the time. So it begins the notion that the revolution is not won by everybody else. Was that the most elite unit to be in for the young men you're reading about, to be an officer in the Continentals?
So, it's a double question, and it's a big one. The first part is, as I hear it, how do Continentals, how does George Washington, how does the country view the contribution of the Continentals to the victory in 1783, 1785? How do they view it? And the second question is, yes. So I'll start with the second one. Is being a Continental officer the most elite thing? The way that I'd answer that is to say, they thought so. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. They have an esprit de corps. It's real, because they're experiencing something that no one else in revolutionary America is experiencing. All militia, by its nature, is local. You're fighting with your brother and your cousin and drunk Joe, and you are also close to home. You will not go far from home. You'll just sneak out in the middle of the night and go back. Militia is, by its definition, local. The Continental regiments, as you all well know, are raised at a state level. And so recruiting, sometimes it bleeds over across state lines. Basically, everybody tries to poach Pennsylvania men. It's like, you, the German, you, come on. We need guys, come on. So even regiments can be parochial. A regiment can be from a state or a part of a state. But the officers mingle with each other. And the idea of the Society of the Cincinnati, as you well know, is to take that mingling, that act of amalgamation and creation from many one, and preserve that at a military level, at a level of fellowship, Masonic fellowship, out into the Republic. So they think that they are elite and special. And they're not wrong. They have a unique experience, which runs smack dab into what most Americans feel in 1783. Washington, in several of his farewell addresses, particularly the passage that you were pointing out in my conclusion, Washington particularly tries to praise his soldiers and his officers, which is interesting, praising both soldiers and officers. There's a class thing there. He has to praise his army because no one else is. No one else is. There's this amazing sermon I found, and it's in the book, in which it's April 19th, it's Patriots Day, it's 1783, it's this congregational sermon, a state-sponsored sermon about the victory, and this minister praises the militia, he praises the Minutemen, he praises the taxpayers, he says nothing about the Continental Army. He praises Washington, but not the army. And there is a footnote in the published version of this. Footnote, he says, when I praised the militia and all these people and made no mention of the army, I did not mean to disparage the contribution of the army. They, of course, should be paid, and all promises that are made to them should be kept. But that's as good as it gets in 1783. Is that someone saying, it's like, we made these poor men some promises, and yes, we should of course pay them with the taxes that we're not willing to pay. So we're not going to pay them. Never mind. That's as good as it gets. So that's what Washington is pushing back against. And I think that might be one reason why the identity of continental soldiering kind of mingles in to a collective revolutionary generation. The officers hold themselves as a cadre apart. They have a very strong sense of themselves as a unit. But I think for the enlisted men, they mingle with their kin who were militia, or their kin who were in the state troops, or Drunk Joe who went out on that privateer, and damn, he got paid. But they don't hold on to a politically useful military identity in a way that's different from or separate from their fellow citizens. But in private, those bonds of fellowship, those persist in very powerful ways, and you can see it very powerfully in memoirs and pension applications as very old men swear for each other in distant states from where they fought. Missouri, deep out in Kentucky, they're maintaining fellowship. Thank you.
Jake, thank you again. And thank you all for joining us for the first Catesby Jones lecture series. Thank you very much for coming.